Review.
Calling Laser Spine Institute was the best decision I've ever made.
I can lift up my 3-year-old, run and play, and they help me get my life back.
Okay.
Laser Spine Institute, a less than 1-inch incision, a lifetime of standing tall.
Finding the right cutting tool for the right job is tough, but finding one that cuts the tough stuff is impossible. Not anymore. Introducing Multi-Cut, the 3-in-1 tool that's a precision slicer, wire cutter, and utility knife all in one. Now, cutting the really tough stuff is really simple. The secret is the mechanical action of its offset pivot point power blade that creates superior torque and leverage for incredibly easy operation. Cut a steel cable in a snap. Slice a garden hose just like that, and cut PVC pipe in nothing flat. Multi-Cut is great for trim and molding, and perfect for crafting projects. Cut flooring for a custom fit, and trim vinyl blinds with perfect precision. Other tools just can't cut it. But even this 10,000-pound strength tow rope is no match for Multi-Cut. It's strong enough to cut tree limbs, but gentle enough to trim flowers. Multi-Cut has a titanium-coated wire cutter for wire in a range of gauges and sizes. Repair an old battery cable. Slide the adjustable base, and now it's a utility knife to open shipping boxes in a flash. Or product clamshells lightning fast. Slice full sheets of paneling in seconds. Cut carpeting with ease. And cutting drywall is a breeze. With a razor-sharp stainless steel blade, sure grip handles, and an industrial steel chassis, Multi-Cut can take a beating and still make the cut. No matter how you slice it, Multi-Cut is the sharpest tool in the shed and the easiest to use. Extra blades store in the handle, and the blade locks to store safely. It's a precision slicer, wire cutter, and utility knife all in one. And right now it's yours for just $29.99. Order now and get a second Multi-Cut free. Just pay a separate processing and handling fee. Get 2 Multi-Cut cutting tools, a $100 value, all for just $29.99. Get the Multi-Cut 3-in-1 and get the job done. Call now.
To order Multi-Cut for $29.99 plus processing and handling, call 1-800-891-8068 or order online at buymulticut.com. That's buymulticut.com. Order now.
It's not over yet. Not by a long shot. This is Chicago, the heart of the Midwest. Show us you belong. Because this is it. The FedEx Cup playoffs continue at the BMW Championship, Thursday at 2:30 p.m. on Golf Channel.
Closed captioning brought to you by Beltone, your premier hearing care partner.
Beltone is conducting a new trial of the most advanced, virtually invisible hearing aid available. You put them in and suddenly go, oh man, what have I been missing out on? Call today.
On the nuclear power plants, we have a rigorous process. That's a tried and true process in place. If hurricane force winds are predicted to impact any one of the 2 nuclear plants that we operate here in Florida, we will shut those plants down 24 hours before the onset of forecasted winds hitting Category 1. And they will then be restarted only after the winds passed and the storm has cleared.
So many levels of preparation there, looking at Florida Power and Light. Let's look at Hurricane Irma. Latest advisory in 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Winds up 155 miles per hour. Category 4 storm moving to the west at 12 miles per hour. So looking at the forecast, once again, we find just about all of the Florida Peninsula, actually all of the Florida Peninsula in that area of red. Moving into South Georgia, by the way, too, Atlanta Metro Schools keeping a close eye on Irma as well. And you see bringing wind and rain from the southeast to parts of the Mississippi River Valley as we get into next week. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, want to make sure everyone is aware the latest hurricane warnings up in purple, the hurricane watches in orange, including Tampa, over to Orlando. Let's get right to our hurricane specialist, Brian Norcross, with the latest on what you're watching right now, Brian.
Well, we're taking a look at what's going on with the storm. The question, Maria, is Cuba going to affect this hurricane in some way? And it's going to be a very close call. Let's take a look at this in some detail here. There are the numbers that you showed, still in a really unbelievable storm. If it hadn't been 185 miles an hour for so long, just a couple days ago, we would, our minds would be blown by this to be at 155, 925, and this giant hurricane, the kind that you read about in the history books. But here it comes. You can see it's kind of turning a little bit toward the Cuban coast, and some of the models have indicated that it's going to spend a little time there. Might that weaken it a little? Yes, but then it has this very warm water in the Straits of Florida to go over, so might that re-strengthen it again? And the answer to that is yes. So the National Hurricane Center is kind of smoothing all that out in their forecast. So now here's the just what Maria was just showing, the watches and warnings. And I just want to make clear that the reason that the hurricane watches, which remember means hurricane conditions are possible, and these are hurricane conditions are expected in the warning. The reason that this doesn't cover the whole state right now is only because the watch goes up about 48 hours before you expect the conditions to become unhealthy for preparation. So when the winds start blowing. So they just were longer till that time farther north, but all of this is going to move north. And I think most of the state is going to end up in a hurricane warning before we're done here. That means the entire state of Florida needs to be in preparation mode. And here are the odds of where this is going to happen. Here are the tropical storm force odds. And look at that. That's all the way up to 70%, all the way up into Georgia. And it's only that low because it's so far in the future.
Here's to the Wildcats till we die.
Winds start getting in there, and actually more than that, 2.5 days away or so. So it's only because of that the numbers are even that low. But this is a certainty. We feel very confident that this is going to happen in Florida, and nobody should think otherwise. Now, in terms of the hurricane force winds, this is interesting because this is new with the new advisory. This tells us that the tongue there of highest probability of hurricane force winds is now aimed at the west coast. And the west coast of Florida has not had a large hurricane in decades. Matter of fact, if you want to actually go back and understand both in the Keys and on the west coast what the hurricane like this can do, go back and look at Hurricane Donna. It hit Marathon and essentially wiped out Marathon. And then it went up and did tremendous damage in large parts of the Fort Myers area. But these were small towns in 1960 when this happened. So this is the kind of hurricane that Hurricane Donna was then. That's the lesson in the history book. Here it is close up, and here you see it coming in on Morón in Cuba. And the big resort, Varadero, is right down the coast here. So they may have a significant hit from the storm. You can see the eye has got a little dry air in it, I think. And that looks like a dry air tongue coming in there that might have come from its passage by the Hispaniola, where Dominican Republic and Haiti are. When the air comes off those mountains, it dries out. Or maybe the air coming off the hills in Cuba, filtering in, drying it out a little bit. But hurricane hunters are telling us it's very strong. And when we look on the Cuban radar, we see a very solid donut there. And that's about 50 miles or so across. And then you have the strongest winds in the eye wall right around there. So the question is, where is that band of winds going to go? That's what we really want to know. And right now, the best information is that that's going to be in the lower to middle Keys, and that's going to be on the west coast of Florida. But we can't absolutely guarantee, of course, that it stays there and it doesn't wobble back if something happens when the hurricane interacts with Cuba. So here is the plot from the National Hurricane Center. That's the estimated area of hurricane force winds, the estimated area of hurricane force gusts, and then tropical storm force winds 40 miles an hour and above. Now watch as we go forward in time here, and you'll see as it comes up near Florida, you can get an idea of how much of Florida would be impacted by this. So if it were to continue on this path, kind of up the west coast of the state, you can see the hurricane force gusts would be over the entire state, but the core of the storm would be the western half of the state, and stronger in the Keys, and then it'll be a little weaker here and then a little weaker here. But the impacts, if it stays on this track, are going to be extreme on the west coast of Florida. All right, so that's the situation, and we're very fearful, actually, for what's going to happen on the west coast if this trend continues. Not that the east coast is going to escape. We expect hurricane force gusts there, including in Palm Beach, where Justin Michaels is right now. Justin?
Well, Brian, I'll tell you what, lots of preparations here in Palm Beach, Ireland. You can see the condo complex behind me, the condo building, rather, and you can see many of those floors, many of those condos certainly have hurricane shutters up, and they are well protected against whatever winds and nastiness comes in off of the Atlantic Ocean because of Hurricane Irma. Go about an hour and a half south of where we are right now. Take a look at some video of Miami. People doing a lot of the same preparations all over the state, doing everything they can to get their homes, get their properties, get their businesses ready by putting up plywood, also hurricane shutters, and just making sure they have everything they need in place by the time Hurricane Irma hits. So that's some good news. Some bad news is there's a lot of stuff happening here in Palm Beach, not the least of which is there was a mandatory evacuation order from Palm Beach Island, where we are right now. That was about an hour and 35 minutes ago. Mandatory evacuation. There are still people here on Palm Beach. We can expect at some point police officers will come down and ask people to get out of here. So people do need to heed those evacuation warnings, because here on this island and also just to the west of us in West Palm Beach, there are only going to be a handful of first responders and police officers who are going to be staying and waiting out the storm. They will help as long as they can, but they will not risk their lives when the storm gets bad enough that they deem it's too unsafe to go out. And that's why the important message needs to be, if you are in an evacuation order zone, you have to go. You cannot stay, because you're putting your lives at risk, and you're also putting other people's lives at risk who may need to rescue you. So just keep that in mind if you make the decision to stay beyond an evacuation order. Let's go up to John Zarella. John Zarella is about up in Cocoa Beach, just north of where we are right now. And John, you and I have been talking about that throughout the day, just following and heeding those evacuation orders. Up to you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And at 3 o'clock this afternoon, for the barrier islands in Brevard County, that evacuation order went into effect, giving people 24 hours to leave the barrier islands, go inland or wherever they are going to end up. And the concern, of course, is, well, how many people are actually going to heed that warning? And you just don't know until it's all over. Now, one of the things you can see here is a lot of folks still coming down to the beach here at Cocoa Beach, checking it out, looking at the surf rolling in. And some of them that we've talked to have said, look, we're not leaving. We're staying. We're going to go ahead and ride this thing out. But two important things have come up this afternoon, Justin, from emergency management here in Brevard County. One, and let me show you the sand dunes over here. They're reporting that people are going down to the beach and they're taking the sand off the sand dunes to fill their sandbags. That is illegal. You cannot do that, folks. Please do not take the sand dunes. They are natural barriers to storms. Another thing that the folks are doing here, the emergency management is reporting, that here at the last minute, they're cutting tree limbs, and they are leaving the tree limb debris in the street. It will not be picked up before the storm, which means it will become a projectile, a missile that will either hit your house or hit your neighbor's house. So do not go out at the last minute and start cutting tree branches. That is not a very, very wise thing to do, folks. Please pay attention to that. Don't do it. It's going to end up costing you more in the long run, or your neighbor. Maria, I'm sure that that's something that we all need to pay attention to and tell folks pretty stridently, look, that's not a smart thing to do, folks.
Absolutely. We're going to always reinforce that message. John Zarella, thank you so much. And, we also try and say, too, that whatever you've experienced before regarding hurricanes and preparation, you can't necessarily go on that guidance. So we are here to prepare you as best we can with the latest information. And here's what we know right now with Hurricane Irma. It's one of the last 2 flights out of Miami International Airport taking off now. And more than 600 flights have been canceled today, 75% of their schedule. And Georgia's governor has expanded the state of emergency. It now covers 94 of Georgia's counties. Florida's governor says millions of gallons of fuel have arrived at ports along the state's east and west coasts. Irma has claimed 17 lives in the islands. The U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary has issued a public health emergency in Florida. Okay. And for just the 5th time ever, Walt Disney World Resort